I grew up with parents who had an ideal relationship. They met, fell in love, and got married quickly, but their marriage was stable and full of love. They showed me what a healthy, happy marriage looked like, and I consider myself lucky to have such examples in my life. However, this left me a bit naive about how most relationships really are. I got hurt often in high school relationships because I expected the same kind of commitment and stability my parents had, but that wasn't what I experienced. During my senior year of high school, I met a girl at my job. She was my age, but had already graduated. She was from the Philippines, and I had always been attracted to foreign women, particularly Asian women. What started as a casual relationship grew more serious over time. I met her parents, and they immediately liked me, which made me think she must have dated some less desirable guys before me. I didn't expect our relationship to progress the way it did, but halfway through my last year of high school, she got pregnant. At that time, I wasn't too focused on going to college, but I had started considering it. Those dreams disappeared when I found out she was pregnant. I knew I had to grow up and take responsibility. I didn't want to be the kind of guy who ran away from his responsibilities. I wanted to be in my child's life and make sure they didn't grow up in a broken home. So after I graduated, we moved in together and our son was born. After moving in together, life wasn't easy, but we made it work. We didn't have much money, but we managed. Her parents lived just 2 apartments away, which made things easier for us. Whenever we needed to go out, we could leave the baby with them. For a while, everything seemed fine, but things started to change when my fiancée turned 21. She and her friends wanted to go out more often, and I didn't mind at first. With my work schedule, I had to be up early, so staying out late wasn't practical for me. Besides, I was never into the club scene. Her friends were either married or in long-term relationships, and I knew them well enough to trust them. Some of their significant others were my friends too, and they would have told me if anything suspicious was going on. As time passed, nothing bad happened, so I trusted her when she went out. Things took a turn when she started talking about a coworker named Jason. It was Jason this, Jason that. At first, I wasn't too concerned, but she mentioned his name enough that I started to notice. I decided to meet Jason and see for myself what was going on. When I met him, he shook my hand and acted like we were friends. My fiancée told me that Jason was having problems with his girlfriend, and she was trying to help him out. She even spoke to his girlfriend to offer advice. Back then, cell phones weren't as common, and since my fiancée had never given me a reason to doubt her, I didn't think too much of it. She sometimes hung out with her coworkers, including Jason, but I stayed home with our baby. Occasionally, I would go out with them, and everything seemed normal. But then one night, she asked if she could go out for a few hours because there was something she had to do. She said she'd explain everything later. I reluctantly agreed, went to bed, and didn't think much of it. When she came home a few hours later, she woke me up and said she had something to confess. That's when she told me she had cheated on me with Jason. She said she went out that night to end things with him because the guilt was eating her alive. I was in shock. I didn't yell, scream, or even argue. I just went silent. The next day we talked about it more. She admitted that she had feelings for Jason, and they had kissed. She initially denied any sexual relationship, but as the conversation continued, she eventually confessed they had slept together. First, she said it happened once, but the more we talked, the more the truth came out. It had happened multiple times, and one of her friends knew about it. I was devastated. All I ever wanted was a marriage like my parents, where love and commitment came first. I felt like I had failed, not just as a partner, but also as a father. The thought of my son growing up in a broken home terrified me. I wanted to fix things for our child's sake, so I told her I needed time to think. We tried to work through it, and over time, she did her best to regain my trust. Eventually, things started to feel somewhat normal again. Over time, things seemed to improve. My fiancée made efforts to regain my trust, and I wanted to believe that we could move past everything for the sake of our family. Eventually, we had another child and even got married. Financially, we were still struggling, so when a good friend of mine offered me a job in a different city with better pay, I saw it as a chance to improve our situation. The plan was for me to move first with my father-in-law, work for a few months, and save up. Then my wife, kids, and mother-in-law would join us once we were financially stable. It seemed like a solid plan to get us on the right track. But about 3 months after I moved, my wife dropped another bombshell. She wanted to separate. At first, I was confused. What did she mean by separate? She said she had developed feelings for someone else and wanted to take a break before anything happened. She wanted to pursue a relationship with this new guy and didn't want to cheat on me again. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. No matter how I responded, I was going to lose. If I agreed to the separation, she'd be with this new guy. If I refused, she would likely end up cheating again. It was a no-win situation. I later found out that she had never stopped seeing Jason. The moment I left for the new job, she went back to him, despite promising she was done with him. But her relationship with Jason didn't last long, and she quickly found herself involved with another guy. Despite everything, I still moved my wife and kids down to the new city, mostly because I wanted to be close to my children. I thought maybe once she saw how much better life could be in our new home, she would come around. But I was wrong. All she could think about was this new guy, and nothing I did seemed to make a difference. Her parents were furious with her for destroying our family, and they almost disowned her. They were old-fashioned and had always supported me, but even their anger couldn't change her mind. She refused to see the damage she was causing, both to me and to our children. Then tragedy struck. One weekend, her new boyfriend and a group of her friends drove down to visit her. On their way back, the boyfriend fell asleep at the wheel. The car veered off the road, flipped several times, and her best friend was thrown from the vehicle and killed. Her best friend's child, who was also in the car, was severely injured, and her husband nearly died from his injuries. The boyfriend came out of the accident with barely a scratch. My wife was devastated, and instead of pulling away from him, she grew closer to him because of the tragedy. She quit her job and moved back to our old hometown with him. This was the final straw for me. I filed for divorce. After the accident and everything that had happened, I knew divorce was the only option. I didn't want to go through with it initially, but there was nothing left to save. We didn't have any assets to divide, so the main issue was custody of our children. I pushed for a 50-50 custody arrangement, and neither of us had to pay child support. Despite everything, I still wanted to be a good father to my kids. Eventually, my ex and her boyfriend had a child together, but tragedy struck again. Their baby passed away from a meningitis infection at just 6 months old. The loss of her best friend and her child seemed to sober her up, and she became a different person after that. Though she had caused so much pain, we somehow managed to find a way to co-parent our kids without conflict. I focused on raising my sons and made sure they had a stable upbringing despite all the chaos I had endured. Today, my sons are grown, married, and have children of their own. They know most of what happened between their mother and me, but I never let them experience the worst of it while they were growing up. We put on a front for their sake, and I'm proud of how they turned out. As for my ex-wife, we still talk occasionally and get along well enough. She never married again, but she has 2 daughters with her boyfriend. I found my own happiness after the divorce and have been married for nearly 2 decades to a wonderful woman. Despite the hardships, I got the marriage I always wanted.